Hello and welcome. As Israel's deadly war on Gaza continues, it's prompting protests on the streets of capitals around the world, including Tel Aviv. But a survey conducted by Tel Aviv University earlier this week says that 94% of Israelis support the Gaza campaign. In contrast, the apparent unity of the Israeli public fails to be reflected among its politicians, where a deep internal divide has appeared. As Israel gears up for national elections next month, the country's leaders have been justifying the war on Gaza as an act of self-defense, while more progressive voices say the motives behind the campaign are more cynical, aimed at boosting the fortunes of those vying for power. Meanwhile, the Palestinian death toll rapidly approaches 1,000, with more than 4,000 injured, nearing the casualty figures from Israel's military offensive in Lebanon in 2006. Israeli casualties remain at 13, 10 of them soldiers. On today's show, we ask, what's really motivating Israel's war on Gaza, security or politics? Remember, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room and then take part. We also welcome your phone calls on the show as well. Well, to discuss the issue, I have with me from Tel Aviv, Uri Avneri, a veteran of Israel's 1948 war, a former member of the Knesset and a founder of the Gush Shalom peace movement. Uri Avneri, good to have you with us, sir.
Thank you.
Surely there are many Israelis who are totally against this, though we're hearing from that Tel Aviv University poll that 94% of the country is united on this campaign against Gaza. But if there are those who have a voice of dissent, why isn't the world really getting to hear that voice from Israel that says this is wrong?
That's very simple, because the Israeli media and the international media ignore and to boycott all the actions of the Israeli peace movement since the beginning of the war. There are every day two or three demonstrations throughout Israel. We had, 1 week after the beginning of the war, we had a demonstration in Tel Aviv in which 10,000 people marched in protest against the war. I don't think you heard anything of this anywhere on the media.
Right. Do you think in any way that those justifying this campaign as saying it will make Israel safer have an argument? Is this going to make Israel safer in any way?
I think it will not make Israel safer, but on the contrary, will do terrible damage to the state of Israel in the long run. I think this war is a crime against ourselves. It's a crime against the state of Israel, because when tens of millions of Arabs all over the Arab world see these terrible pictures coming out of Gaza, it will throw us back for 2 generations in our efforts to achieve peace. After all, we should not forget for a moment that the root of all evil is the occupation of Palestinian territories. And the only way to put an end to the occupation is to make peace with the Palestinian people, all of the Palestinian people. And therefore, we have demanded, since the Palestinian elections, for the Israeli government to start to talk with Hamas. Hamas is a part of the Palestinian reality. And whatever one thinks about Hamas, we cannot ignore it. It's stupid to ignore it. And I hope that if this terrible ordeal is over, all of us should immediately start to work for a really serious peace negotiations. I hope that this incoming administration in the United States will really do what Hillary Clinton promised today, seriously work for peace. Seriously, I mean not the way it was done during her husband's 8-long administration, in which nothing at all happened for peace. On the contrary. But that, we all hope that President Obama will really set a new course.
Let me ask you.
I must say already Obama, by his...
Sir, I was going to ask you, I just wanted to ask you on the issue of the Israeli political scene, who stands to benefit from what's going on? Because obviously those who question the motives behind this war on Gaza, saying that it's going to benefit someone there in power who's looking to try and strengthen their position. Who benefits, in your opinion?
Well, it very much depends on how the war will end and how it will look to the Israeli public. If it looks like a victory or a serious achievement, then Ehud Barak will be the winner, because his Labour Party was down, and since the war it seems that they have been going up in the polls, and maybe for 1,000 Palestinian victims he'll get 5 or 6 more Knesset seats. If the war will look bad, if in the end it will look that we, after all these terrible things, we have achieved next to nothing, the great winner will be Benjamin Netanyahu. Actually, it's very difficult to stop the war, to get off the tiger, because if Barak or Tzipi Livni will want to end the war, Bibi Netanyahu will say that they are sticking a knife in the back of the army, that they are preventing the army from winning the war. Right. And therefore the election campaign plays a very central role in this war.
Let's get a different perspective and bring in here at this point from Philadelphia, from Philadelphia here in the U.S., Daniel Pipes, director of the Middle East Forum. Mr. Pipes, thank you very much for being with us. It must be getting very hard to justify what Israel is doing right now, with the death toll rising the way it is, and a number of lies coming out of the statements being made, such as Hamas was on the scene when attacks took place. It's getting very difficult to justify it, isn't it?
Well, I have the difficult, complex position of being entirely for the Israeli effort, but quite critical of the way in which it's taking place. So let me start on the first point, then move to the second. I think the fact that the Israelis have been subjected to 6,500 rockets over the past 3 years from Gaza, from Hamas, suggests that the time has come for them to do something about it. That said, the way they're going about it doesn't strike me as very competent. I don't know what the goal of this attack on Hamas is. I don't know what they're expecting to come out of it. I don't understand the tactics they're using. But on the other hand, I entirely endorse the effort to destroy Hamas, if that's what they're in fact trying to do.
Right. Let's get Sergio on the line from Cyprus. We get our viewers' questions in on the show. And Sergio, what would you like to ask?
Yes, hello.
Go ahead, please.
I just wondering, a few months ago when the Gaza was under siege, the Hamas people, they break the wall for Qassam people to go to Egypt to get some food or cigarette or things like that. Why at this time they do not break the wall so the Qassam people, they can escape to Egypt, like as they did a few months ago?
I presume, Sergio, there would be a far greater amount of security on the border there. I want to ask Mr. Pipes, perhaps if the pressure on that siege, which a lot say is responsible for Hamas escalating its actions, perhaps if that siege was lifted on Gaza, the residents would have less reason to turn to Hamas for some kind of action.
I don't think that the Gazans have turned to Hamas for economic growth. They've turned to Hamas because they like what it stands for. But it was striking almost exactly a year ago, in January of 2008, when Hamas cut the border fence and something like 700,000 Gazans entered into Egypt for a brief period. The Egyptians became alarmed, and it became clear to the outside world, myself included, that if Gaza is a so-called jail, then it has 2 wardens, and indeed that the Egyptian government should be taking control, should be taking responsibility. What we're seeing is armaments going to Gaza from Egypt, but we're not seeing a prosperous economic entity. So I believe that the Egyptian government should be pressed, and pressed hard, to take control of Gaza.
Let me Sorry, sir. Let me bring in Nuri Avneri here in Tel Aviv and ask for an answer to an email we got in here, sir. The viewer didn't give their name. It's anonymous, but it came in from Sudan. And the viewer wrote in saying, Hamas is always beating the drums of war and instigating the Islamic countries to wage war against Israel. As a result, it suffered a serious blow. The position of George Bush is correct. Israel should target Hamas and should avoid civilians. Even Daniel Pipes has said perhaps the way this campaign is being conducted might be flawed. What do you feel is the biggest flaw in the way Israel has gone forward with this attempt to crush Hamas?
The idea itself is stupid. Hamas is a political movement which has won the majority of the votes in Gaza and the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. It's deeply rooted in the population. the population are not, this is not a foreign army which has invaded the Gaza Strip. It is the sons and the daughters of every family in Gaza. So the idea that a regular army, the fourth biggest army in the world, with an incredible firepower, can crush a guerrilla movement, deeply embedded in the civilian population, it's military nonsense. It's political nonsense. It's not just nonsense. It is a disastrous nonsense, because the only way you can fight this war is by hurting the civilians. You cannot fight Hamas without creating terrible damage to the civilians. And therefore, the war plan itself is deeply flawed. It makes it unavoidable to kill these masses of civilians.
Before we take a break, let's get Shakir on the line from the United Kingdom with a question or comment. Shakir, what would you like to ask or say?
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, this is Shakir speaking from UK. I just have the question that how can we define terrorism? Like when a man who has been expelled from his home and he has been deprived from food and medicine and things like that, and he just tries to hit back, he is termed as a terrorism.
Okay.
But a state...
Shakir, thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a short break here and get back to that issue that you've raised when we return. We're going to take that short break now and more of our discussion in a moment. As we pause, let me remind you, as usual, you can join the conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com and enter the chat room. You can see there's a debate taking place there right now. We'll be right back.